Hi Year 11, today's video is a quick video to help you with question 1 of paper 1 of your language GCSE. This is often said to be the simplest question, and so this is a quick video. But what is important about this question is that you do not spend a long time on it and you guarantee yourself the 4 marks. Before we start, 2 things. Firstly, I will link to the text that we're using as an example, which is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'll link to that in the description box. The second thing is that I've got a cough, so I've tried videoing this again and again, and I can't get through the whole thing without coughing, so do excuse me if I pause. So, first tip, you read the question and you work out where you are meant to get your information from. It's really important. So it says, read again the first part of the source from lines 1 to 10. List 4 things from this part of the text about Mr. Utterson. You then, after you've checked where you're looking, you look at what you're meant to get information about. You must only get information about that. Nothing else. Only the thing that you have been asked to look for. So what I've done is I've copied and pasted here a section from the whole extract. So this is just to help us in the video. You won't get that. You need to use your highlighter to highlight down the side of your extract the number of lines that you can look at, and only look there. And only look for information about the person or the thing they tell you to look for. So in this case it's Mr. Utterson, and it's from this section of the text here. Mr. Utterson, the lawyer, was a man of rugged countenance that was never lighted by a smile. Cold, scanty and embarrassed in discourse, backward in sentiment, lean, long, dusty, dreary, and yet somehow lovable. At friendly meetings, and when the wine was to his taste, something eminently human beaconed from his eyes. Sometimes something, indeed, which never found its way into his talk, but which spoke not only in these silent symbols of the after-dinner face, but more often and loudly in the acts of life. He was austere with himself, drank gin when he was alone, to mortify a taste for vintages, and although he enjoyed the theatre, had not crossed the doors of one for 20 years. But he had an approved tolerance for others, sometimes wondering, almost with envy, at the high pressure of spirits involved in their misdeeds, and in any extremity inclined to help rather than reprove. Okay, so you've got a range of information there about Mr. Utterson. The first trick for saving time, if you look at the mark scheme, it says there's indicative content. Now this isn't from this one, this is from another one. You can find it free online on the AQA's website. But it's lots of simple facts, and it doesn't really matter how good your inference is on this question, so you can be really quick. Some of the others across the 2 papers, they mark you on how sophisticated you are. In this one, they don't. So you can be really obvious and still get high marks. Now, if you look up here, it says the first things, you have to look at the topic of the question and the right lines. They're the first things, do that. You can quote or you can paraphrase. Okay, so you can either use words directly from the text or you can turn it into your own words. Either will get you the mark. Sometimes a quote will be better and easier, and sometimes a paraphrase. But what they say here is, they're kind of saying here it's okay if you do one really long sentence with more than 1 point in. I would recommend you don't. Yeah? Just because for your own organisation and your own timing, just this, keep it simple. Yeah? The other thing is that you must not, and some people do this, just copy whole chunks from the text. So here they're saying, don't just copy every single word down in the hope that you're getting some information out. They will see that as cheating. Obviously it's cheating, you're just copying everything down. What you can do is copy a section with a little bit to introduce it, which I will show you how to do in the answer. But I would say this one, do not be fooled by this. Do not think, oh, it's okay to run long, rambling sentences. Your sentences should kind of look like these examples. Yeah, so there was a wind, there was a mist on the hills, the air was clammy, the air was cold, that kind of thing. And it says always at the bottom that anything else that is true that you can check. Yeah, so these are just a hint. Now this was for a question about whether we're looking at, sorry, we're looking at Mr. Utterson. So here would be my suggestions. Mr. Utterson is a lawyer. Mr. Utterson has not been to the theatre in 20 years. Mr. Utterson is boring, but also lovable. Mr. Utterson drank gin when he was on his own. Now, some of these they're basically just paraphrased. So Mr. Utterson was boring, but was also lovable. I paraphrased from up here. I've seen this word dreary. And in my case, you might not, but I was like, okay, dreary, it means boring, and he's lovable. Boring but lovable, so I paraphrased it. However, if you didn't feel comfortable doing that, because there is no mark for sophistication, you can just go for the foremost obvious facts. Mr. Utterson the lawyer. Mr. Utterson is a lawyer. Yeah? If you want to be really, really particular about it, just put speech marks around lawyer. There's your quote. Mr. Utterson is a lawyer, we can check it. True. Mr. Utterson had not been to the theatre in 20 years. So it said, and although he enjoyed the theatre, he had not crossed the drawers of one for 20 years. Okay? Remember, you can quote. So if you had this bit and you weren't quite sure what approved tolerance for others meant, you can still write it. You could still put Mr. Utterson had an approved tolerance for others. But equally, you can use the really obvious things, the things that aren't very difficult. So you've got some stuff here about high pressure of spirits and in any extremity inclined to help rather than reprove. Well, that means that he doesn't tell people off, he helps them. But you're in a hurry. You don't want to sit there working out what that means. If you can find 4 really obvious facts, put them down. You could put it down like that if it's a difficult one. Or, to be honest, you could just find the things that are written in really plain modern English, find 4 of them, write them down. Mr. Utterson is a lawyer. Mr. Utterson has not been to the theatre in 20 years. Mr. Utterson was boring but also lovable. Mr. Utterson drank gin when he was on his own. You could also talk about how he is sometimes embarrassed in discourse. Now, you might know that discourse means conversation. So, he is embarrassed, or you could just put in quote marks, he is embarrassed in discourse. The key thing is to keep your sentences short, start them with the topic, and then is, has, was, etc. And then the information. 1, 2, 3, 4. Allow yourself a maximum of 5 minutes. And if you're not quite sure, you can use quotes. So you can say, Mr. Utterson had an approved tolerance for others, if you want. But if there are 4 really obvious things, you're not going to lose marks for putting on them. Things like Mr. Utterson was a lawyer. Mr. Utterson had a rugged countenance. Mr. Utterson, his face was never lit up by a smile. Yeah? And you can paraphrase it or you can quote it. Your maximum time for this should be 5 minutes. But if you practice this a lot, you should be able to get it down to 2 or 3 minutes. Regardless of what set you're in and what your target is, this is a kind of quick skimming and scanning for information question. And you should go for it as quickly as possible. And if you have 4 short, really short and clear sentences, you've done okay. Just remember, stick to the bit of the text you're supposed to look at and start every sentence with the name of the thing you're meant to look for. Good luck, Year 11. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to watch other videos. New ones will come up on each question before your mocks.